Mr. President,
The senator from Kansas.
I ask unanimous consent to use 2 scientific models as props during my speech.
Without objection.
Mr. President, it seems like every week we get a new update on the timeline for the origin of the COVID-19 virus. This week we learned that in October 2019, that over 1,000 soldiers from over 100 countries had gathered in Wuhan, China for a military Olympics, if you will. And then what we learned is several weeks after that event that many of our own athletes, our own military personnel became ill, as well as folks from other countries. And we went back further and we talked to some of those soldiers, and they told us that Wuhan, China looked like a ghost town during that event. A town of over 11 million people looked like a ghost town. And what I'm frustrated about, Mr. President, is that the CDC's not investigated this, the military's not investigated it, that during the proper times we could have tested their antibodies. When we learned of this, maybe perhaps in March or April, they probably still had antibodies. But even today, we could investigate it. But we need the FDA to do their job as well. We need the FDA to pass a T-cell test so we could go back and see if these soldiers who became ill after this event, to see if indeed this was the COVID-19 virus. Certainly the timeline, by all accounts, is going backwards every month. But I think it's time to update the American public too on what I feel are the lab origins of this virus. And certainly this is just a theory. But I think we need to look into and discover and talk more about the biological origin of this virus. Mr. President, this is a model of COVID-19, the virus that's killed millions of people across the world. It looks very much like the original SARS virus, with a few exceptions. And that exception is a protein spike. The protein spike that I'm talking about is composed of 2 units, and we'll call those 2 units S1 and S2, and this is a model of that COVID-19 protein spike. It is very special, it's very unique. The S1 spike, let's talk about that just for a second. The S1 spike looks very similar, looks exactly like viral gain-of-function research that was conducted between a lab in North Carolina and with Dr. Shi, the bat lady from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That S1 spike sticks to lung cells like glue. So what we did, again, this is NIH-funded research, North Carolina lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What we did is we took the original SARS virus and we slapped a protein spike on it that made it stick to human cells like glue. Think of it like a key in a lock. Think about that if you have a human cell is the lock, that there needed to be a special key. So they invented a special key that would impact and go into only human cells. And then, so that was done about 2015. But then after that, things go dark. We don't know what happened, but somehow this COVID-19 virus has another part of this protein spike, and we'll call it the S2 unit. The theory is that in the Wuhan Institute of Virology and possibly in the Wuhan CDC lab, further research was done, and they developed a special part of this spike, the S2 unit, and this is what's so special about it. It has what we call a furin cleavage site. The furin cleavage site is, don't take it from me, take it from Nobel laureate Dr. David Baltimore. Dr. Baltimore said the furin cleavage site, and I'm paraphrasing here, with its double arginine codons, this is the smoking gun for the lab origin of the virus. That double arginine codon just doesn't occur in nature. And that only human cells have the ability to use that furin cleavage spike and break this into 2 separate units, and that's what allows this virus to dump its genetic material into human lung cells and replicate. As a physician, a person that studied virology a bit, this protein spike just doesn't look like it comes from nature. Everything about it would suggest that it was made in a laboratory. It's just too mean. It's too angry. It's just too perfect. It's too infectious. And the unique thing about it is, though some would make us believe that this virus comes from bats, this virus doesn't like bats. It only took American scientists and the Chinese scientists 4 months to discover the origin of the original SARS virus, that it came from a bat and then it went to another animal, an intermediate host. It only took us 4 months to discover that virus. On the MERS virus, on the other hand, it took us about 9 months. Here we are 18 months later, and we don't have any type of an intermediate host. All the mapping that we're seeing points that this virus was made in a laboratory. Now, the Wuhan lab could disprove me. They have the data to prove me wrong, but I'm afraid that data is now gone. It's gone forever, most likely destroyed, unless, of course, we can find it in a cloud somewhere. It's outrageous that a comprehensive investigation on the origins of COVID-19 has still not been carried out. Now, I'm proud that this body passed a resolution that Senator Gillibrand and I put together calling for a transparent investigation of the COVID-19 outbreak mandated by the World Health Assembly, unanimously passed this body. And that resolution demanded a full and transparent investigation to include the United States and our allies and our partners around the world. But now it's time for the Senate to do our job. It's time for the Senate to fully investigate the origins of this virus as well. It would be utterly irresponsible to suffer through the worst pandemic in a century and not have the origins fully investigated. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. Read this, Mr. President. Yeah. Mr. President, I have 8 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders.